Alcatraz prison terrified the most seasoned criminals. Strong bars, armed guards, high fences with barbed wire, all this on an island surrounded by icy water. It was believed that it was impossible to escape from there, but 3 prisoners came up with a cunning plan and found a way to freedom. The fugitives were never caught. Whether they survived or not remains the greatest mystery of the 20th century. We'll tell you about the daring escape from the most secure prison in America right now. The history of Alcatraz Island is inextricably linked with the city of San Francisco, where a gold deposit was discovered in the mid-19th century. This led to the so-called California Gold Rush. San Francisco Bay turned into one of the largest ports in the world, and the city itself began to grow rapidly. A lighthouse was erected on Alcatraz Island for ship navigation, and a couple of years later a defensive fort appeared there, with cannons to protect against potential enemies. At the beginning of the 20th century, a military prison was built on the island, and soon the authorities realized that this was a very good place to keep prisoners. The crime rate increased greatly at that time. America needed a symbol of retribution that would bring terror to any criminal. This symbol was Alcatraz, specially converted into a federal prison according to all the latest security standards. Steel bars, tear gas containers on the ceiling of the dining room, 600 solitary confinement cells, guard towers, high fences with barbed wire, 1 guard for 3 prisoners, and the most important obstacle, the icy waters of San Francisco Bay, with sharks and strong currents. Alcatraz was popularly called the Rock and the Prison of Prisons. Especially dangerous criminals who violated the rules of conduct in other prisons and those who tried to escape were sent there. The world-famous mafioso Al Capone served his sentence here. Everyone who entered Alcatraz lost his name and acquired a serial number. According to official data, over the 29 years of the prison's existence, there were 14 escape attempts, and all of them ended in failure. However, the mysterious fate of Frank Maurice and the Anglin brothers casts doubt on this assertion. The 3 fugitives found Alcatraz's weak points and left into the unknown under the cover of darkness. Who are these people and how they were able to do the virtually impossible? Frank Maurice is believed to be the organizer of the escape. He had a difficult childhood. At the age of 11, left without parents, the boy wandered around shelters and foster families. At the age of 13 he began committing crimes, and often ended up in jail, from where he constantly escaped. Before Alcatraz, 33-year-old Maurice had 11 escapes. His criminal history includes theft, armed robbery, theft, and drug possession. He was distinguished by high intelligence, had an IQ level of 133. Arriving on the island, he met brothers John and Clarence Ellen, who were serving a sentence for robbing a bank and escaping from another prison. The 4th conspirator was car thief Alan West, who also ended up in Alcatraz for an unsuccessful escape. The prisoners discovered that over the years the concrete walls of the building had become weak due to constant humidity and salty sea air. The cells had ventilation grills measuring 10 to 20 centimeters. Using tablespoons and a homemade drill with a motor from a vacuum cleaner, everyone unraveled the wall around the grate so that they could crawl through it. They worked when music was playing in the block. Maurice had an adjacent cell to West, and the Anglin brothers also had adjacent cells. While one was digging, the other was watching the guard, then they changed. The holes were masked with a painted cardboard plug that was indistinguishable from the wall. Through the holes made, the prisoners entered the corridor and climbed through the pipes to the attic, where they set up a mini workshop for themselves. For 6 months of preparing the escape, they collected almost 50 rubberized raincoats, from which they sewed life jackets and built a raft 2 by 4 meters. The instructions were found in a popular mechanics magazine, and wooden oars were also made. The musical accordion became a pump for inflating the raft. They made models of their heads from wire, plaster, glue, and paint, and they took hair for the models from a hairdresser's. At the same time, a way out of the building was found, an old ventilation pipe leading to the roof, which was not poured with concrete like others. On the night of June 11, 1962, After the evening check at 21:30, Frank Morris, John, and Clarence St. Glynn put the false heads under the covers and left their cells. The fourth conspirator, Alon West, was unable to get through the hole he made in the wall, so the plan was carried out without him. The fugitives went out onto the roof of the building through a hole in the ventilation, went down to the ground through the chimney of the bakery, overcame a fence with barbed wire and found themselves near the water in a place hidden from observation. Having inflated a homemade raft, they set off to meet freedom. The disappearance of the prisoners was discovered only the next morning during the rise. The night guards did not suspect anything. A clever trick with fake heads in beds allowed them to gain about 8 hours of time before the alarm was sounded. FBI agents, police, military, and coast guards carefully searched the entire island and set dogs on the trail, but to no avail. The picture came together when the fourth conspirator, Alon West, was identified. He spoke about the preparations for the escape and the prisoners' future plans. Together they wanted to sail first to Angel Island, then to the mainland, then they planned to steal a car and rob a clothing store, after which their paths diverged. However, over the next 2 weeks, the police did not receive any reports of thefts or robberies, the FBI said. Soon investigators found in different places of the Bay San Francisco several important clues: a homemade paddle, a rubberized bag with photographs and notes of one of the Anglin brothers, an inflated life jacket with teeth marks on the valve, apparently the clamp was leaking air, shreds of raincoat material, which are believed to be the remains of the raft. After years of investigation, an FBI report stated that the escape attempt had failed and those involved were likely dead. The logic was this: if they were free without money, the criminals would sooner or later do something illegal, thereby giving themselves away to the police, but this did not happen. On the other hand, there are more than 100 indirect evidence that the fugitives survived. When the FBI closed the case and turned over all the materials to the U.S. Marshals, they found official documents that stated that the raft was still found on Angel Island, with footprints extending into the depths of the island. Perhaps this is a mistake, because the raft was not listed among the evidence found. There was also a record of a vehicle, a blue Chevrolet, being stolen just after the escape. Another important piece of evidence is a photograph that was given to the Anglin's relatives by a family friend. According to him, he saw the brothers in Brazil and communicated with them. The picture was taken 13 years after the escape. The facial recognition program, with a probability of 99 and 70%, identified John and Clarence in the photograph. Forensic experts also confirm the high probability of a coincidence. In 2013, the FBI received a letter allegedly from John Anglin, in which he reported that on the night of the escape, all three managed to reach the shore and survive. The author writes, "I am 83 years old and I don't feel well. I have cancer. Yes, we did it that night, but with great difficulty. If you announce on television, you promise to send me to prison for no more than a year, and provide me with medical attention, I will reveal my location." This is not a joke, John Anglin. And law enforcement agencies doubted the authorship of the letter. By the time the text was discovered, 5 years had passed, and no one had gotten in touch. Repeated attempts were made to recreate the escape. In particular, in the Mythbusters program, the leader on a homemade raft sailed from the island to the mainland and came to the conclusion that this was quite possible. Only the authors of the experiment considered that the fugitives did not go to Angel Island, as the police assumed, but along the stream, which was on the way to the Golden Gate Bridge of San Francisco. Be that as it may, a year after the escape, Alcatraz was closed. It was too expensive for the American authorities to keep prisoners on the island. Food and drinking water had to be delivered there by ferry. In addition, the old building required money for repairs. Prolonged exposure to humid, salty air weakened the strength of the concrete walls, and the reputation of the most secure prison was undermined. Through their actions, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers had a great influence on the reflection of Alcatraz in culture. Their work formed the basis of many documentaries and feature films, books, and computer games. Many years later, the island received the status of a National Historical Monument. The prison buildings have turned into a museum, which is visited annually by more than 1.5 million people. Today, Alcatraz attracts with its historical past. Many are interested in seeing the conditions in which the most dangerous criminals were kept, as well as where the most famous escape in the world began.